Hello, beautiful people of FOSDEM. Thanks for coming for my talk. I know that you didn't actually physically go anywhere. Still the unfortunate reality, but I'm still very excited to be here. Of course, waiting in chat because the videos are pre-recorded. So that means if you have any questions, you should ask them right away. I will keep an eye on it. I will try not to answer in chat, but keep them for at the end of the talk, so I'm not distracting too much from that. But yeah, join the conversation there. I look forward to your questions. So we have a whole hour. I'm going to go through everything that's new in Nextcloud in 2021, which is quite a lot. As you will see, things all over the place. I'm going to really do it per release. So, you'll have to add it up in your head, but it's a lot. So otherwise it would just be, just too much, I think. And this keeps it a little bit, understandable, I think. So, let's get started. Apologies for the dog. She also thinks that we should get started clearly, and not wait any longer. Let me start with Nextcloud 21, which is a good start of 2021. Came out in February, and a short summary of what was new in this release. I can say it was really focused around performance. We had done a lot of work reducing database queries, introducing a high-performance backend. I'll talk more about that later, and really trying to make it more snappy for the users and decrease the load on the server. And we really made a difference there. But we also introduced new features, collaborative features like a new whiteboard, author colors and text, and other things. There was work done on Nextcloud Talk as well as in Nextcloud Groupware. So, let's dive into some of the details. So, this release was faster than ever, and that was really our goal, to make Nextcloud 21 a lot faster, a lot smoother, decrease the load on the server. So, the first thing we did was to go through all the database queries that Nextcloud does and try and reduce them. Some of them we could remove completely, just optimize away. In other cases, there were multiple queries done that would hit the same thing, so we could cache them. In other cases, we could combine queries and put things together. So all in all, we really did a big reduction in queries, especially if you look at, for example, sharing. If you have a lot of shares, then Nextcloud needs to do a lot of queries to get the right information from the right places. And this really adds up. So it used to be that if you had 1,000 shares, then you would need about 3,000 database queries just to get the information from that on the page load. And we reduced that by a factor 3 to 1,000. So it's really quite helpful if you have a lot of shared files. Of course, you shouldn't really put 1,000 shared files in a single folder from different people. That gets pretty heavy after a while. But then, we optimize it a lot, and later we did more work to optimize it even more. So we also introduced support for PHP 8. Which also really helps because PHP 8 itself is already a lot faster than the older releases. So this really made a nice difference for the users as well. We worked on object storage. We introduced an idle mode for text. So to explain, Nextcloud Text is our real-time collaborative text editor. And if you're working with 2 or 3 other people in a text document, of course you need to make sure that if you type something, the other people get the change right away. So for this, text is keeping connection with the server and checking for updates. Guess what? This, of course, creates a load on the server. Now, if you have 20 documents open, I personally have lots of text documents open all the time, and some of them are, with other people, some of them not. So the text editor is constantly checking for updates, but, if they're just in the background, I'm not using them. That's creating a load on the server, which is not really needed. And we had a lot of sysadmins who said, look, this is really creating a lot of load for us. So what we did is we introduced an idle mode where after 30 minutes or so, the editor just stops updating and has a little reconnect button where it says, okay, you clearly are not paying a lot of attention here. You're not doing anything. So I'll go in idle mode, and then you have to click, and then it reconnects and continues. So it shouldn't really bother users, but it helps keep the load on the server a bit reasonable. Really changes all over. We made LDAP faster. Even cleaning out the trash is faster. It's the little things that count. Updating and upgrading is faster, even the installation, as well as getting apps from the App Store and new updates there. But the biggest thing that we worked on That's our high-performance backend. And this is really a new component that we developed for Nextcloud. And I need to talk a little bit about PHP, the language that Nextcloud is written in, to explain what the backend does. So PHP as a language it's used very widely, and one of the reasons for that is that it's very scalable. The way it works is that whenever a request comes in from the browser or a desktop client or a mobile client or something, or even other application, then PHP or the web server fires up PHP, it handles the request, and it shuts down the PHP code again. So it's really independent. So if you have 5 users and you run 5 servers with each a PHP web server on it, then each of these users can send a request to each of the different servers, for example. Well, you wouldn't do that for 5 users because they can be on one server. But if you have 10,000 users, then, when you go from 10,000 to 20,000, all you need to do is double the number of PHP servers. Done. It scales perfectly. Just more servers. Ready. Of course, there are other components that Nextcloud needs, like the database, but it does not scale so easily. And file system doesn't scale that easily. But PHP itself, and Nextcloud therefore itself, scales pretty much perfect. However, if you as a client need to know if something changed on the server, well, you fire a connection, you ask for changes, the server says, no, nothing changed, and PHP shuts down, the connection shuts down. So you need to ask again after a while. So what our clients are doing is they check every 30 seconds, or they used to. They check every 30 seconds. Hey, server, did something change? The server says, nope. Okay, back to sleep. But of course, every time you do this, you need to set up a connection, open a secure connection to the server, talk via maybe routers and lots of other components, get a no, and then you shut it down again. And this created a lot of load. Actually, 90% of the connections to a typical Nextcloud server in a big installation is coming from the clients who just say, hey, did something change? No. Did something change? No. So that's a lot of work. And it creates strain on the entire infrastructure, the routers, the load balancers, all the components in the whole infrastructure, they're working. Also using a lot of electricity. So this is wasteful. So what we did is we developed a component in the language Rust. So Rust is a language developed by the Mozilla Foundation. And we built a component with that keeps a permanent connection open with every client. And then when something happens, let's say I'm sending a request to the server with a comment on a file, then as part of that request, this Rust component gets notified. So there's only one request. And then this Rust component gets notified, and then I make sure that all the people who need to be notified of this change to the file, either the comment, that they get an instant notification. So you get 2 benefits. First of all, it's instant. It's not that after, on average, 15 seconds, because we're checking every 30 seconds, hey, something changed, you get notification. Now, if a comment on a file, 15 seconds waiting is not a disaster. But imagine if it's an incoming phone call, and you want to get your notification right away, right? Nextcloud Talk. This is really relevant. Another thing, of course, if you are waiting for a file to sync, because a colleague says, hey, I'm saving this now, you're in a video call or on the phone, and the colleague says, okay, I'm saving it now. Okay, his client or her client will update right away. They will upload it to the server immediately, because an Nextcloud client knows locally, something changed, upload, done. But then the download could take, up to 30 seconds. And then it has to start downloading. And if it's a 1 kilobyte file, that'll be done in half a second. So you just wasted 30 seconds for something that takes half a second. It's not nice. Now, with the high-performance backend, upload happens, instant notification to your client, downloads it right away. Done in 1 or 2 seconds. Not something you need to wait for. So it gives a better user experience. Of course, the other thing it does is it reduces the connections to the servers. All these loads generated by all these clients checking in, did something change? Gone. What we do now is we still check every 5 minutes just to make sure we don't miss anything. And there might be still an old app or a piece of code that doesn't properly update. You never know. So to be sure, we still check fully every 5 minutes. But going from 30 seconds to 5 minutes is, of course, a huge difference. And you're giving a better experience at the same time. So, double win. And it's not just used by the desktop client, it's also used by the web interface. So you get your notifications now instantly there as well. Little thing, but again, the web interfaces were of course also checking occasionally with the server. Not longer necessary, they just keep a connection open via the high-performance backend. Now, this is an extra component you need to install, so it's not 100% trivial, but it's not super complicated either. It needs Redis as a caching backend because it uses that to communicate. I don't know the details, but you need Redis. And then, you have a faster server with less load and more instant response. Double win, I would say. So, performance, that was a big theme for Nextcloud 21. Performance improvements all over the place, and then the high-performance backend. Now next, collaboration improvements that we did in Nextcloud 21. So let's start with the introduction of a whiteboard. It's a collaborative whiteboard. It lets you draw lines and shapes, take notes, write text with other people at the same time. You can even upload images and cool features that you can present to other people in a call. What you then get is that like the view is then going to be the same for everyone. So if you zoom in or zoom out or move the view, then it'll move like the same way for everybody else. This was built on a third-party tool. Technically, it's pretty complicated, but yeah, it works nicely for a basic use case where you have a couple of people, you're in a call, does the trick. It's nice, of course, to have such a whiteboard. Later, we introduced something else that you can use for the same thing. Depending on what you need, what you're looking for. But I'll get to that later in the presentation. Now, the next point: author colors and text. It's a little thing, but it's always really nice to be able to see with colors who edited what when you're editing notes, for example, from a meeting together. Or not. You can turn them on and off. But it's a cool option, I think, to have. Also very nice, we introduced document templates. So if you often, write invoices or, expense reports and these things, you put them in your document template folder. And then when you say, okay, I want a new spreadsheet, and then it says, oh, well, here's your expense report sheet, you can click and get started immediately. It's a little thing, but it brings files, I think, to a next level a little bit with this kind of stuff. It all adds up, So, Talk, we did a lot of work in Talk for this release. Introduced the raise hand feature. So, you click the button and you see this icon. We introduced message status indicators so you know if somebody received the message, if they saw it, and if it was properly sent. If not, you can then resend it, which is also nice and helpful, of course. You can now control whether a conversation is visible. So before, you could send somebody a link to a conversation or you could add them to a conversation. What you now have is a search bar where you can search through conversations and they can be open. So you can join and leave them again. And then on the conversation, you can configure whether it is visible for other people and they can join. And they can even include guest users on the server or not, if you want. So you can, and we use this internally in Nextcloud. We have a lot of guest users on our system, community members who contribute with us, and there are chat rooms that are open for guests, and there are chat rooms that are not open for guests. And this is separate from being able to send a link, and this is still possible, of course. But this is really for if you have an account, either a guest account or normal account, and then you can search. I also introduced push to talk. So you can hit the space bar to basically toggle the mute. So it's not really push to talk, it's a toggle mute. So if you're talking and you need to cough, you hit the space bar and you let go again and you were muted while you were coughing. Or maybe somebody came in and you say like, oh yeah, I'll see you for lunch. And then you let go again. And the other way around, if you're muted and you hit space bar, you unmute. So, if you have a meeting with a lot of people, it's better to be muted all the time. And then whenever somebody says, okay, does everybody agree? You hit the space bar. Yes, I do. And you let go again. And then, it toggles the mute. It just makes it a bit easier to keep the calls clean, in my opinion. We also let you add a description to a conversation. It's a little thing. But again, in Nextcloud, we have all these rooms. The talk team has a room, and the Groupware team has a room, and the Office team has a room, and they have regular meetings, and then they put in the description like, hey, we do a weekly meeting on this day, this time, you're welcome, or not, we don't want anybody there, things like that. You can put it there. and many other smaller features and performance improvements, etc. in Talk. So that's Talk, Nextcloud 21. Then there's Groupware, that's mail, calendar, and deck. And there we mostly worked on mail, introduced drag and drop. You can configure the special folders, so like the send folder and the draft folder and the trash folder and such. Introduced better threaded view, attachment handling, a bunch of other improvements also to the Contacts app. There you can now retrieve avatars from like Gravatar or Twitter or even Facebook if you want. So from your social media network, if you don't want to upload your own image or you want to use the same image everywhere, then now you just say, get it from there, and then Nextcloud will do that. So there were lots of smaller features all over the place, but I've already gone in enough details. We're already running for quite a while. So this is the most important stuff. It was a lot of performance work that we did for this release. Now, let's talk about Nextcloud Hub 22. The second release in the year came about 4 months later, as we usually are on a 4-month cycle. So this introduced user-defined groups, integrated task and chat, easy approval workflow and document signatures, knowledge management, and Groupware improvements. So let's again go into the details. So the first thing is that with circles integrated, we introduce user-defined groups. So this allows you to do is that you create a group as a user. Now, normally groups are defined by an administrator. The admin says, okay, we have the engineering team, and we have the sysadmin team, and we have, a management team, and we have a back office team, and all these different teams. But if you work in a very project-oriented organization, or maybe at a university where students are constantly working, creating a group to work on a project would be nice, right? But then you need to go to the system administrator, which, the university, they have more to do than help all the students with their groups. Or another thing, let's say you're always sharing with a group of 5 people, your favorite 5. Wouldn't it be nice if you could create a group that you can then just share that to? No, this is what essentially our user-defined groups do. So you can do everything with user-defined group as you can do with a normal group. So you can share files, you can assign tasks, create chat rooms for a group, etc. But you can edit them yourself, no need for a system administrator. Another cool feature is that you can make them publicly listable. So other people can see what groups there are on the server, and you can say, okay, this is a discussion group about Marxist philosophy, and it's open to join, because Marxists are all about control. You can then say, but your request needs to be approved, and it can be approved by almighty administrator, or it can be approved by like a bunch of people have been made admin of this group. So this is a nice way, of course, to create self-organization in an organization or in a team. So again, as I said, it's nice for universities, it's for teachers, projects in a company, or just for yourself with people you often share with. So there was user-defined groups in Nextcloud 22. Then we introduced knowledge management. So knowledge management is like your internal documentation. You have, I don't know, either you have it maybe on book still, but in a lot of organizations you have, of course, all these documentation on things like how do you handle travel reports, how do you handle requests for reimbursement, etc. And all these procedures, you document these. Wouldn't it be nice if you can put them in Nextcloud? Well, of course you can. You can just put a bunch of PDFs there. But, even if you have full text search, so you can search through it, you can't have links between them, a lot of limitations still. So that is what Collectives, as the name of the app is, knowledge management, is for. It lets you create and manage sets of documents, pages. They can link to each other. You can just edit and what you see is what you get. So it's Nextcloud text, essentially, with, images and to-do lists and bullets and bold and headers and all that stuff. So all the things you need for documentation, pretty much. Nice thing is you can control the access to each of these knowledge bases, set of pages, with circles, the user-defined groups. So you create a group and then you say, okay, this group has access to this knowledge base, or the other way around, create knowledge base and then there's a group, associated group, automatically made. Now, you can find things with built-in search, and Nextcloud has this unified search, which already little thing coming in 23, or came in 23, it's already out, that you have that in the mobile apps as well. And even in the desktop client. So we have this search feature in Nextcloud that you can find files, chat messages, emails, and documentation items. So you use the search on the top right, or on your mobile phone, or on your desktop client, and among the results you will find the results from the documentation expense report. You'll see, of course, all your documents that are expense reports, as well as how to file expense report. Click and it opens in the documentation. In the end, the files are simply markdown files, so you can even share them with a public link if you need to let an external person get access or edit it. So that makes it very easy as well. And another thing that came in 23, we introduced the ability to share a complete knowledge base as a public link, so you can give external people access to the knowledge base as well, read only or read write. So you can say, hey, this is a documentation even for, for customers if you want, or for, friends. And then you write the documentation, let a couple of people give access to edit it. Other people get read only access maybe, and you send a public link for outside of the organization. Super cool. So, knowledge management. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is really a thing about, the whole is more than the sum of the parts. You might know that saying, and that's what this is about. It's about integration between Talk and Deck. So Talk is our audio-video chat platform. Deck is a Nextcloud app that lets you manage tasks, Kanban style. So you have these cards, and each card is a task. And what you can do in Nextcloud 22 is you can share from Deck. If you have a card, you can share the card into the talk room in a conversation, and people can see it there, click it, and then it opens up in Deck again. And the other way around. If you got a chat message that says, hey, Monica, can you make sure that the presentation is ready for tomorrow? Then Monica can click the three-dot menu, and she can then turn the chat message into a task in Deck. Just say, okay, it needs to be on my to-do, my personal to-do, put it in the to-do section, the to-do stack, or the in-progress stack if you're already working on it, and then create the card, done. Yeah, super nice, super helpful just to work together. Yeah, there's a lot of other inter-app integrations already in Nextcloud. For example, if you're in files, and you want to share a file in the shared text box, you can type the name of a conversation, the chat room, and then share the file directly into the chat room. Or you can attach it to a Deck card. You can just say, okay, attach to a task, and then you get a pop-up that says, okay, what task? Select it, and then the file gets attached to it. So we already have this integration all over the place. And if you're editing a document that is attached to a Deck card to a task, and in the chat room and in files, you're still editing that same document, so other people can join you for editing with the author colors. You can all see who's working, and you might be working by having opened the file from Deck. Another person might have opened the file directly in the chat room, and a third person might have opened the file in files. It's all in one place, which is of course less mess, less confusion. And if you as a company have 10 of these SaaS platforms like Todoist and Wunderlist and Trello, and people using Dropbox and Google Drive, and it's all over the place. Nobody knows where the final document is. As administrator, you have no control. Maybe there's personal data being shared on Google, which means it's going to an American company, which means you're in violation of the GDPR. Not cool. With Nextcloud, you can have all this functionality in one place, keep it under control, and keep people productive as well. So this is what we're working on and why we're integrating these functionalities this way. Collaboration. Really important for us. Talking of collaboration, there's of course a certain flow in which you're working with other people, and these are the approval workflows. So we introduced, the feature is approval workflow. So we introduced the approval workflow feature in Nextcloud 22. And think of a flow where you say, hey, I have done a trip, and I need my expense report approved. Or of course before that, you need to get approval for the trip in the first place, right? You say, hey, I want to sample the barbecues in Brazil and Argentina. I want to see if they're equally good. Very important task. Somebody has to sacrifice their time and effort, of course, to check this. And then you write a proposal. You say, okay, request approval. in the Nextcloud interface. Then you say, okay, this is a travel approval, so you have different approval flows can be defined. And then you can see for each approval flow who gets to decide. Well, that might be your boss or maybe a team of managers or peers, your colleagues. And then you say, okay, request approval. They will get a notification. They can see on the file, like, hey, there's an approval request. They click it, and then they can approve, deny, or of course use the comments to say, okay, that's a ridiculous idea. You don't need to compare Argentina and Brazil. Just go to Brazil. Best barbecue ever in the south there. No competition. We can talk about this later in the chat. I have opinions. No, actually not that much. I've never been to Argentina, but Brazil barbecue is awesome in the south. Makes it easy to, get this flow automated in Nextcloud. So the administrators, they can define a whole bunch of workflows. They can say what users or groups of users can request approval. So you can say, okay, this is the travel approval flow for engineering. Can be approved by one of the 3 engineering managers. This is the reimbursement approval workflow for this team. Can be approved by those people, etc. I can define that very gradually and very fine-grained. So, travel and other approval workflows. Now, when we're talking about workflows, there's another flow that we thought, needed automation and optimization because it's used regularly in a lot of companies, including in our own company. And that's some of these things we, of course, use internally. No surprise there. We're Nextcloud users. And so one of them is PDF signing. So if you're signing a lot of contracts with customers, like we do, growing very fast, lots of customers, then it's nice if you can use that digitally, do that digitally. So probably tools like DocuSign, EID Easy maybe, they let you, upload a PDF and then get it digitally signed. Now, we integrated this into Nextcloud. So in the file view, if there's a PDF, you can say, okay, get this signed by that and that person. So you get a pop-up, you get to choose who needs to sign it. And then that document gets uploaded to DocuSign. We also support EID Easy. We also have LibreSign support. LibreSign is open source on-prem document signature service. And then the recipient, the person needs to sign, they get an email, they get a button that says, okay, please go and sign this document. They click and then they go to, well, in the case of DocuSign, they go to the DocuSign website, just the usual. They sign a document and then, you will get notified that the document was signed. So really nice, really helpful if you're in the finance department, for example, and taking care of all these contracts, or sales, of course. Now then, we worked on Groupware. We really wanted to bring this to a new level, really improve it a lot. And also we did a whole bunch of features, and also stability and performance improvements. So for the calendar, we introduced a trash bin. So if you delete an event, you have 30 days to change your mind and bring it back. I personally find it really useful because I sometimes delete and I shouldn't have, I need it. So it's in the trash bin then. And we introduced basic support for resource booking. We improved on that later. So resource booking is if you want to use the company calendar to book a car or to book a meeting room and these things. And that's supported in Nextcloud with 22. In Nextcloud Mail, we improved the threading. We introduced email tagging. In 23, we made the email tagging compatible with Thunderbird and Apple Mail. I think other clients too, but don't remember the details, but we'll get to that later. And introduced support for sieve filtering. So sieve is like server-side filtering of emails. Now, there's also DEC Talk integration, as we talked about earlier, search improvements and other, improvements. There's lots of other stuff. Now, in Nextcloud Talk, a lot of work was done as well, mostly around, both actually business and home user features. We introduced message deletion. We introduced profile information in the mobile apps, privacy settings. We have the read status that we had, the confirmation that we introduced in 21, and now you can configure this. You have now the option to share your location on the mobile app. So then, there's a map location shared. We introduced voice messages, both in the web interface and in the mobile interface. I have now colleagues who don't send me text, but they send me a short, voice recording. It works nicely. I'm still, I think I'm too old for that. I don't do that. And sharing contacts, so you can share the contact from your address book in Talk to another user. Again, on mobile, mostly relevant, of course. We introduced multi-session support, so you can be logged into the same chat room on your mobile phone and on your desktop. That would cause issues before, but now that works. Of course, you can't have 2 video calls at the same time. Well, not of course, but it's not supported to have 2 video calls in the same room from 2 devices, from one user. We have sounds for joining and leaving, and a whole bunch of UI improvements and integrations in Deck and Calendar, and Outlook and other stuff. It's really good stuff. And there were, of course, always more improvements in Nextcloud. Yeah, Nextcloud 22 also brought notifications in the app navigation, compression feature in files, performance improvements to the search, and many other improvements. So all in all, it was again a really big feature release with lots of improvements. And user-defined groups, the chat and task management integration, the approval workflow, the document signature workflow, the knowledge management, and all the improvements in Groupware and in Talk. So it was really, a big step up. But the year wasn't over yet. One more release to go, and that's of course Nextcloud Hub 23. The thing is, we didn't call it Hub 23 because so much changed and improved in this release that we decided to call it Nextcloud Hub 2. So we introduced Nextcloud Hub 1 in 2020 in January, and we thought that after 2 years, almost 2 years, this was a really big step forward. So I'm going to talk a lot about the improvements. We decided to call it Nextcloud Hub 2. So a quick summary again. So we introduced a profile page, and automatic user status settings, a lot of performance improvements in syncing. We'll get to that. We had in Nextcloud 21 the high performance backend. Well, there's a big improvement here in Nextcloud 23 as well to performance with the desktop clients. Improvements in Nextcloud Groupware. We introduced appointment booking. That's really cool. You might know this from like Calendly, that you can book and approve an appointment with somebody else. In the web interface, you can see the calendar and then say, okay, I have this time, and really cool. Nextcloud Talk introduced background blur, a device check screen, user permissions, and a lot of other stuff. We introduced Nextcloud Office. I'll get to that, but really cool. Improvements to the desktop client and mobile clients. And for home users, really cool, new easy deployment method. The Nextcloud AO all-in-one is a Docker container with Docker containers in it that makes deployment, installation, updates really easy. And we introduced Nextcloud Backup. This is a peer-to-peer backup solution for private users. Again, not for business. Okay, don't use it in your company. It's not made for that. There are better tools for that. So let's go into the details. This was just an overview. So the first thing we did is we wanted to provide context. When you work with other people, it's good to know that if you ping them on chat and they don't reply, to know why they don't reply. Maybe they are in a call. Well, Nextcloud status would allow them to set that, except, well, you need to set this explicitly. So what we do in Nextcloud 23 is that if you're in a call in Nextcloud Talk, the status is automatically set to in a call. And you can even configure your availability. I'll get to that a little bit later in more detail, but you can configure your availability. And then, when people book meetings with you, they can see that as well as in the status. So really good stuff. We also introduced improvements in sharing. So also in the desktop client and in the mobile client, you can share to a chat room or to a card, a deck task. Unified search is now in the mobile and the desktop clients. So, this finding of a knowledge base item or, emails or files or anything in Nextcloud, you can then do that also from your phone. Of course, profile and status are there now. And the Android app introduced calendar and contact backup. So you can back up to your Nextcloud if you're not using Nextcloud Calendar, of course. Otherwise, it's already on your Nextcloud. Yay, good for you. So, I mentioned performance. And this release introduces a really cool new feature. So with Nextcloud, I talked earlier about how PHP works. One request, one PHP process. Now, again, this scales really well. If you do 10 requests, you can spread it out over 10 servers which is obviously even more relevant if you have 10,000 requests, because then you can just split it over 5 or 10 servers. But if you're uploading 10,000 files, or 10,000 times, you need to initiate a secure connection to the server, and then start a PHP process to upload or download the file, do that, and then close again. And then again, and again, and again. Now, if each file is 10 gigabytes and it takes you a couple of minutes to upload, hey, not a problem. We even make it faster and better by uploading it in pieces, so that if your connection breaks in between because your mobile network goes out or your internet, you can just resume later on. All fine and easy. But what if you're uploading 10,000 1 kilobyte files? If you have a 100 megabit connection, you would expect this to go with a decent speed, like 10 megabyte per second. But 10 megabyte per second would mean 1,000 connections. That's a lot in a second. Nextcloud servers would be overloaded by that, so there are connection limits. And therefore, it's not going to be so fast. You might, for very small files, easily be looking at like 10, 20, 30 kilobyte a second upload, which is, if you're on 100 megabit connection, it's a little bit silly. But that's just the nature of the beast. Well, no longer. We introduced a feature that essentially packs a bunch of small files in a single file, uploads it, let the server extract it and add the information to the database. Done. So this really increases the synchronization speed like crazy if you have lots of small files. And so typically you add 1,000 files to Nextcloud, and they will be different sizes, small ones, big ones, etc. So you won't always see a massive speed increase. But of course, in an extreme case where you upload 10,000 1 kilobyte files, you can easily see a speed increase of a factor of 100. And if they're 1 byte each, then it can be a factor of 10,000, because they can all then be uploaded with one request in one file and then extracted on the server, done. So this can give a really significant performance improvement. And of course, reducing the load on the server from all these unnecessary connections. So, win-win. So again, and after the high-performance backend that gives you instant synchronization, you now also get faster synchronization. So the synchronization itself is sped up this way. Second thing that we did, really for system administrators, is the ability to delegate administration tasks. So you can go into the administration screen and decide for any of the admin panels if another user gets access to it. So you can maybe give management access to the ability to add, external storage or something, or see the logs or, this again gives you the ability to reduce the load on the system administrator and spread it out between a bit more people without having to give everybody full access to everything. You can control it granularly. A second feature that we did, a little bit under the hood, this is mostly interesting if you're hosting Nextcloud, you can limit the availability of the apps. So if you're hosting Nextcloud, and we have a bunch of big customers like Telecom, Deutsche Telekom, or Ionos, Europe's largest hosting companies are these. And so they're hosting thousands of Nextclouds, or tens of thousands, for small businesses, for example. And so these small businesses, they get a Nextcloud managed server and an admin account there. So, they will of course quickly discover there's this app store with 200 apps and click, install all of them. A lot of these apps are developed by community members. They're not always, of the quality that you as a business need. And besides installing all 200 apps, there are quite a bunch that conflict with each other. They're both trying to add a theme or adding a button on the same place or things like that. They don't all work together perfectly. So, you shouldn't maybe do that. So what is now possible is that in the config file of Nextcloud, you can define apps that you don't want to show up, or only the apps you do want to show up. And then, you can test apps. So, these apps work, they can be enabled, and these apps not. And that keeps, of course, the system stable while you can still give the administration out to other people. And of course, also in a company, in a single company, you can say, as admin, I will give these and these people maybe the ability to, handle some things. So it helps everyone. Now, The next thing we worked on for Nextcloud 23 is in Groupware. So I already teased it a little bit. I'll get to that next. But first, let's talk about mail and calendar. So we integrated mail and calendar in the sense that now in mail, if you have an email, you can then create a calendar event with the content and based on that email. Also introduced in the mail apps on layout improvements, made it possible to use a spam reporting folder. So some mail servers, they have a special spam folder. And if you report spam, you put it in there. And then, there's a system that learns from what is spam. And this is now supported by Nextcloud Mail. And also the configuration was improved. So, yay, improvements. Good stuff. Getting to the really good stuff in a minute. Let's first talk about resource booking. I already mentioned this in one of the earlier releases. I think it was Nextcloud 22, where we introduced the ability for some resource booking, and this was really improved in Nextcloud 23. You can now really have like restraints, so you can say, okay, I need a blue car in Chicago. And then it shows you, what cars are available, and, it makes the search a lot easier. So this is much improved. It's a nice user interface for it, etc. Then, the appointment scheduling. So, this lets other people book meetings with you. So what you do is you define like a type of appointment, let's say product demonstration. You define times. You define a bunch of constraints. You say, okay, each needs to be 20 minutes long. There needs to be at least 20-minute preparation time before. I don't want more than 3 slots a day, and they need to all be between 1 o'clock and 5 o'clock. Then it can be booked like that. So then you get a link where you can point people to, where they can then see the time slots. Can look, okay, next week, Wednesday, 3 o'clock, okay, click. Okay, book a time, give your email address, give your name. Then they need to verify the email address because otherwise you might get spam, right? So the email address gets verified, and then the appointment is put in your calendar. And there's the person who booked an appointment with you, they will get an invitation to the meeting as well. You can set like the location and some notes for it. As a whole, it's a really nice interface, where people can, book their meetings with you. Now, of course, you also have to book meetings internally in a company. So that's where you can set availability. You can say, okay, I normally work from 9 to 5 on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday only from 9 to 12, and Friday not at all. Okay, you configure that, and then people will be able to book within those times meetings with you. And otherwise, they will know that you're busy and not available. Also for internal meetings, bookings got improved. Now, that was Groupware. Now let's talk about Nextcloud Talk in Nextcloud 23. So Talk introduced a kind of a setup screen. So before you join the meeting, you get a view where you can see if your camera is working, maybe switch the camera, you can turn on and off the background blur, you can change the microphone, just check before you join or start the call. And of course you can say, I don't need to see this dialog, just remember my setting from last time, your choice. That's not possible. The second big thing that we did, and by the way, yes, Nextcloud has background blur now in Talk, on and off. The second main thing that we did was try and make the webinars better and easier. If you have external meetings with other people, webinars or such, you can in Nextcloud already turn on the webinar screen so that only moderators can join the room, and external people, they have to wait. They see a screen that says, okay, lobby. Now it also says a title and a description for the meeting, and a timer that counts down so they know, okay, it's coming. And you have now the ability to say, okay, I see that, let's say you're doing a webinar with a partner and you send them the public link too, and they're waiting in the lobby. You can then see if they've set their username, of course. Maria from our partner is already waiting. Let's let Maria already in, and then you can let an individual in, and then they are already in the call or at least in the chat room, and then you can prepare before you start the webinar. During the webinar, you can give people the ability to talk, enable and disable their audio camera permissions as well. So this gives you control over the people who get to talk and who doesn't. So What this also does is lower the load on the network connection, because of course if people don't have permission to send audio and video, they're not sending audio and video. That means you can have a call with more people. Win-win. Because of course they can all receive from the people who do send it. That's what the high performance backend for Talk is for, and this sends it out to everyone. Now our biggest news, there were a lot of big news for Nextcloud 23, that's why we call it Hub 2. Our biggest announcement then, let's say, was Nextcloud Office. So Nextcloud Office is a more integrated Collabora Online. So we worked with Collabora, put up a team of people on our side, they put a team on their side, and they worked on deeper integration in Nextcloud. So the style, the sidebar, we made the sidebar native HTML, we made sure that it looks good, and we're of course working on more improvements there. We also introduced Draw, so that lets you do business-focused vector graphics and data visualization. And you can also use it for whiteboarding during a call. I said there's another whiteboard-ish thing. Draw is also useful for that. Lots of other features. You can now share the knowledge base articles from collectives in public, as I said, via public link. In Deck, there's now a due day shortcut, date picker, and search in cards. Text introduced an emoji picker. It's 2022. Of course, we have an emoji picker now in Deck as well, or in text as well, and many other improvements all over the place. So Nextcloud 23 was a big release. You have, of course, a profile page, automatic user status settings. You have the delegation of administrator tasks, and of course the huge improvement to syncing of small files. Then you have a groupware, you have the appointment booking. In Talk, you have the user permissions and the device check. Of course, we introduced Nextcloud Office. But that's not everything. We also introduced 2 extra things, specifically for home users. And one is Nextcloud All-in-One. So I already mentioned it shortly. This is a Docker image, and it makes deployment of Nextcloud easy. We want to make this available for clouds as well as for private users that you can put on your own server or maybe on a Raspberry Pi. Easy installation, built-in automatic updating, or at least easy updating with just a click. All the containers get restarted. Collabora Online container gets restarted. Nextcloud Office now, of course, container gets restarted, etc. automatically. So it's really optimized, set up very well, really wonderful. Of course, it's not designed that you can have your database on one and your file system on another server. It's not for like scaling out to tens of thousands of users. It's designed for, 10 users, 20, 50, or 100 maybe, depending on the hardware that you use. So that's Nextcloud all-in-one image. And second, we introduced Nextcloud Backup. Now, Nextcloud Backup is designed to be a peer-to-peer backup solution. So the way it works is essentially this. You say, hey, dad, or hey, sister, you have a Nextcloud, I have a Nextcloud. How about you give me a terabyte of storage on your Nextcloud, I give you a terabyte of storage on my Nextcloud, and we use each other's Nextcloud for backup. So if you both have the Nextcloud app installed or the Nextcloud Backup app installed, there's a key exchange that can happen, but you can also simply point to an FTP drive or another public location or an Nextcloud server address that doesn't have the app installed, and then store your files, your Nextcloud, your settings, everything on there. It's of course encrypted, it's compressed. There's an encryption key that you get out that you need to store somewhere in a fireproof safe or, at your parents' home on the attic or, somewhere, maybe just on your phone. Don't lose it, because you will need it to get access again to your file if, your house burned down. I mean, maybe the files are not the highest worry then, but at some point you might want to have your pictures back. And if your Nextcloud server was like in my case, in my, storage closet, I would be very sad if my house burned down for many reasons, but one of them would be losing my Nextcloud server because it has all my private pictures, years of holidays, family photos, etc. Of course, all my food pictures on there. And I wouldn't want to lose that, of course. So Nextcloud Backup makes it super easy. Now, to be clear, this is for home users, is very simple to use. It's designed to back up to another Nextcloud server, or if you want an external storage, can be a Samba or a FTP, etc. But it's not for business. It's not super scalable, and if you're a company, you should use, some fancier backup tool, Borg backup, or I don't know. There are lots of backup solutions that you can use. Barrios is a nice open source one. So don't use this. That's not what it's made for. So yeah, that's it. That's well, not everything, because there's much more that happened in Nextcloud. But these are the improvements, the major improvements that came with Nextcloud 21, 22, and 23 in 2021. So I really appreciate your listening to this, and it is time for me to answer your questions. So, go to the chat and watch the video stream, and I will answer every question you can think of. Thank you for your attention.
Four.
Okay, very nice. So we are supposed to be live now. Thank you for the presentation. Thank you for the video, Jos. And now we can take questions. We have some time, 10 minutes.
Well, there's a bunch of questions. I noted them down because not everybody is upvoting the questions. So let me quickly start with two things I wanted to note at the beginning. First of all is, sorry for the echo. First is I talked a little bit too little, I think, about the last two things pretty much on the list, which was the Nextcloud backup app. I unfortunately didn't really have a good slide for that. But this app is it's really cool. I think I covered most of the important things, but if you have questions about it, then please ask during the chat. And the same goes for the all-in-one. I think there is already some mention of it, so I will probably get to it for a second. Jos van Oever asked a question about it. Hello, Jos. So I'll spend a few words on that later in the questions and answers part. And the third thing I really wanted to say is, we're hiring. I mean, seriously, we have across the company, 30 open job positions. It's not just for technical people. Yes, we're hiring engineers in all kinds of areas, from Groupware and Talk and the server, of course, and various apps and all kinds of stuff. But we are also hiring in my team, in marketing, as well as in sales. So if you're interested in promoting open source and pushing it maybe in your country, like in France or Spain or Italy, it would be awesome if you could join us. That would be really cool. So think about it. Maybe look on nextcloud.com/jobs and send in your resume. All right. So let me then also first apologize. I said something about 1 million features. We didn't get to 1 million, but we did our best. There was plenty of stuff that was new and good. Now let me get to the questions. So Alexei, he asked about the progress of Nextcloud Talk native matrix bridge. We talked about it before, and there's basically no news on that. We still want to do this, but it hasn't risen to kind of the top of our to-do list, so to say. And for people who are not familiar with it, so the idea is that it would natively be possible to use Nextcloud Talk, to bridge from Nextcloud Talk to Matrix. So the idea that we have, and again, first of all, it's an idea. We haven't really started on it yet, and we don't know yet when it will be done. This is open source. We kind of work like open source in that regard. But the thought is that the federation protocol between Nextcloud servers for Talk could be based on the Matrix protocol, so that essentially a Nextcloud Talk server would act as a Matrix server. It wouldn't extend to the clients because the inter-server protocol is different from the protocol that's from to the clients. And so we already have a protocol for our clients, so we wouldn't probably recreate that. but the inter-server protocol that could work. All right, second question. Paul VTP. What I didn't entirely get about the high-performance backend, when it's advised to set it up, always for a few users or in corporate environments. So this is about the high-performance backend for files, which essentially creates a permanent connection to every client, making it act faster, on changes on the server. So, well, there are two benefits to this. One is that it reacts faster, as I just said, for users. Of course, the difference isn't huge. It saves you at most 30 seconds. But still, for an incoming phone call, that's, of course, very relevant, because if you only get a notification 30 seconds after the phone started, the other person started to ring you, then you probably miss your call. And then the other benefit is a reduced load, in theory, on the server. It can, by the way, also kind of create an increased load if there's really a lot happening, because the clients are going to sync much more often. Because every time they get notified, something changed. And otherwise, it would only sync at most every 30 seconds. So there is a caveat there. In any case, well, so I think from this comes the answer. If you want this benefit, even on a small server, it is helpful. But it's not mandatory. You can do without it just fine. And on a large server, it depends a little bit on the usage patterns, but I would often recommend it on a big installation, say, think 1,000 users plus. Then Wolf asked, isn't there by default the high-performance backend with the new version? No, because the high-performance backend is not a PHP app, because it couldn't be done in PHP. That's why we wrote it in Rust. But it also means that installing it isn't like that. It's not like all our other apps, which are PHP and therefore very easy to install and manage. You really need to, as an admin, do a little bit of work to get it installed and working, unfortunately, but that's how the world works. Then Alex also asked, do you have plans to implement on-demand client sync, like C-file, C drive, etc.? Yeah, we already did. This was introduced about a year ago, I think. The thing is, it's only available on Windows because Windows has a proper API for it. We will do it for Mac because there is an API, although the word proper is apparently not really suitable, but it is doable. On Linux, there isn't really a decent API for it. Now, we have an experimental feature that you can enable already in the desktop client, which is essentially saying, enable this with temporary files. So you see 0-byte files that have a .nextcloud extension or something, and then when you click them, the Nextcloud client will download the file, replace the file, etc. It works. It's a bit of a workaround. It needs proper file manager integration to be really nice. By the way, if you're wondering what these weird sticks are that are sticking out here, so that's Popcorn. That's the dog. She's very lazy and lying there like that. Terrible. So it's a hard life, those dogs. Anyway, this is a really nice feature, and well, we have it essentially, but there's a little bit more work to be done on the Linux side, especially. We have only 1 more minute. I'm sorry, I will answer the rest of the questions in chat. There's a question about Nextcloud Push. I didn't even know what it was until 30 seconds ago. I looked it up, but yeah, there's not much I can do. Then there's a question about reinventing another video conferencing tool instead of integrating Jitsi and Big Blue Button. So we're actually building on the underlying library. So we're not starting from scratch, or we didn't start from scratch. It's, of course, already 4 years ago that we started on Talk. And instead of doing an iframe with some other tool, with Talk, we can actually integrate properly. And that's why we developed Talk. We want a good user experience, and you can't do that with just throwing different unconnected tools together and then saying, oh, well, it can do chat. Yes, but if you share a file, it's a different system, etc. That's it.